Good morning. Happy Wednesday. Hi, Virginia. Welcome to Unedited Chats. And it will be completely unedited. We were quickly getting in last thoughts before it was time to go live. So this will be interesting. And Vince and I were having a conversation the other day about restoration of all things, going, why? Why did we leave this so broad? But it's fine. It gives us plenty of leeway to go where we need to go this morning. And I feel like God is just all over this topic of restoration right now. If you're listening to anybody across the continents, they're talking about restoration. And so it's clearly something that is on God's mind. And so it is right for us to merge with his thoughts. We were talking on Sunday, singing on Sunday, to move with the rhythm of his heart. And I will also challenge us to merge with the thoughts of God's mind.
That's good.
Vince, you want to get us started here?
Sure. So like Angie said, this has been kind of interesting to get into because it's so broad. All the things, all the stuff and things, right? Yeah. And so I started looking at and thinking about in this time with God about where do we get here? Where do we get to a point where we need this restoration of all the things? And we've talked about for a few months now the compromise that has come in and kept us contained, but that's really been kind of broken out. And we started to break that out last Wednesday about the path that compromise leads us through, from tolerance to affirmation to acceptance to then adoption of whatever the thing is, and to really kind of start to pull away from that and get in a right mindset. We have to take every thought captive. And so reading in 2 Corinthians 10 verses 3-6, I highly recommend you go read these, ponder them, think about them. But what I wanted to pull out of this is in verse 5, it says, "We capture like prisoners of war every thought and insist that it bow in obedience to the Anointed One." The interesting thing about that stood out to me was the militancy that we need to take on a posture of. And this is also something that has been kind of been something that's been leading up to where we are now over the last few months. Angie shared, I think you shared it in a blog about a dream of soldiers online running through the woods, and we kind of teased that out of what that looked like prophetically, apostolically, where prayer and intercession could come in with that. But it was a shift in mindset to start looking at things with a little bit more militant posture. And if we are going to take thoughts captive like prisoners of war, there's going to be a bit of a struggle in there, because an enemy isn't just going to lay down and surrender at the first sign of conflict or struggle. There is a fight there. And so we have to be able to say, like, if I'm going to take every thought captive, it's not always going to be easy. And I'm going to need to take a militant stance against these thoughts coming at me and capture them, really take hold of them and seize them and make them bow in obedience to Jesus.
Yeah.
And if they are not kingdom thoughts, they can be executed and jettisoned and not worried about. If they are, they're taken on, they're applied, they're used in whatever manner God's showing you. So that's kind of where, when I think about the restoration of all things, I've got to get to that point of, okay, what has been going on in the past that we need to shift away from to be able to get into that restoration state, because we know that Jesus brought about redemption. And on the backside of that quickly is he wants restoration for us.
Right.
But if we aren't taking these thoughts captive that put this imaginary wedge of separation between us and restoration, which is ultimately between us and Jesus, then we are not going to be able to get there. And so the compromise piece that leads you from tolerance on through to adoption of whatever it is has got to be the thing that we shift away from. And I know, Angie, you talked about this on Sunday about flirting with obedience, but serving temptation. And so that is another way that this compromise is manifesting.
Yeah, my gosh, when God drops those kind of things, it's like, huh? It's like everything in me just is like falls. Flirting with temptation, or I'm sorry, flirting with obedience, but serving temptation. That's just like, it's exactly what's been going on, right? Is we are flirting with obedience. We love the idea of it. We love the idea of saying yes to God, but our yes is not empowered with any kind of stick-to-itiveness, and we end up serving temptation, and which means that we walk away from the encounter. That's ultimately what it means. It's not like we're talking about any gross sin unless we are, and it's just the temptation of moving away from that yes the second that we walk out of the inspirational moment, and we've got to start asking Holy Spirit, how do I stick the landing in this at every turn? Because there is going to be temptation to walk away. It's not easy to serve your yes. It's not. We have to find creative ways to do it. And that's one of the things that God has really trained me in is I don't want you to just like give me your empty words here. I want you to actually actively look for ways to serve your yes. And for me, that looked like, identifying the things that are connected to the obedience, and finding different avenues to be able to connect with what it is that God was calling me into. And it's easier said than done, because there's always that moment of like intrepidation where you're like, I don't actually want to do this, or what if I suck? And which gets me into the whole thought process of serving outcomes. If we're going to actually believe God for restoring all the things, I mean, how many of us are having trouble with the God restore me? Right? Like that's a huge piece in and of itself. And then 2 weeks later, we're family. And now here we are jumping into restoring all the things. And that feels like, a cliff jump for me. And because I feel like I'm toddling even in self, like God restore my thought process, right? Restore my mind. I need restoration there because I'm wobbly. I feel like I'm is it James where he talks about being tossed to and fro on the waves of doubt? I'm like, that's me, God. And I want to be resilient. I want to be resilient in the things that he's saying to me. And one of the things that he was drawing my attention to this morning was faith. And in Hebrews 11, it lays faith out beautifully in the first 3 verses. But specifically, he said, you need to have confidence in what it is that you're hoping for, and stop wavering, stop being tossed on those waves of doubt. And, it would be one thing if we're looking for restoration in the tree out back, that's like, for us, feels like an inanimate object, and it has no feelings, and do or die, it doesn't really matter in the end, right? But when we're talking about the restoration of people and holding on to the confidence of what's hoped for there, that's easier said than done, because we don't keep our confidence in hope. We put our confidence in their ability to reach this marker that we've set for them. Wow. And this is where our confidence in hope starts to slide. This is where our confidence in the restoration of all things starts to slide, because we've transferred confidence from hope into their ability to behave the way that we want them to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, does. That's really good.
Jump in, Pepper.
Oh, wow. You know, what jumped out at me right away, Vince, was what you were talking about, that the enemy's not just going to put his hands up and say, put the cuffs on me and take me. You know, if you ever watch Cops or Bad Boys, we know it doesn't happen that way. But I like how you brought that out, because, to be honest, I don't think of that often. And we should think of that a lot more, because it's like, we know what the word says in Corinthians about taking those thoughts captive, but it becomes like rhetoric, because, how many, I know I can't count the times I've had those waves of doubt, like you were talking about, and I say, thoughts, I take you captive in the name of Jesus, and act like that's going to do it and it's over. But hearing the way Vince puts it, it really doesn't happen that way. If you have to capture an enemy and you're going to meet resistance, then you know ahead of time that you've got to have a strategy.
Right.
And you've got to have more than just rhetoric saying, thought I take you captive, and it's like you're trying to convince yourself, but there's not really, sincerity of that yes, or of that thing that you're trying to bring captive. And so some of the things that I was thinking about as strategy, one, which is one of my favorite topics, is prayer. Sometimes it's a period of prayer, or you have to ask God for a certain language, or just begin to pray, and then you begin to hear God about the thoughts or whatever it is that you're struggling with. And then, of course, the armor of the word. Some thoughts you've got to get in the word and build yourself back up, whatever area that may be, faith, unforgiveness, whatever these thoughts are. You're going to have to find something to hold on to in the word that, you can work with Holy Spirit with. And so another thing is, how many of us, we talked about being prophecy collectors.
Oh, yeah.
And how, you've just got these journals, or on your phone, or wherever you keep your prophecies. We have to blow dust off of those and see, am I in the season of this? And if so, because I don't know about you guys, but outside of just prophecies and then rhema words from the Lord and things in my journal, I have to go back every so often, because, and it even surprises me how much I forget. And sometimes it's like, God will say, go back to your journal. It's like, which one? I don't know. And sometimes it's like, boom, it'll just open. It's like, oh, I forgot you even said that, God. Yeah, I said that. And this is what you need to do to steward this in this season,
Right.
And so I love that, because I don't hear many people say that when you take your thoughts captive, it's not just going to happen like that. You're going to meet some resistance. And so you need to have a plan for that resistance.
Yeah, for sure. And will you read that, Vince? Read the whole set of scripture, just because I think that it's so good, and I love the way that the Passion Translation has it laid out, if you've got that handy.
I do. So it's 2 Corinthians 10:3-6. For although we live in the natural realm, we don't wage a military campaign employing human weapons, using manipulation to achieve our aims. Instead, our spiritual weapons are energized with divine power to effectively dismantle the defenses behind which people hide. We can demolish every deceptive fantasy that opposes God and break through every arrogant attitude that is raised up in defiance of the true knowledge of God. We capture, like prisoners of war, every thought and insist that it bow in obedience to the Anointed One. Wow. Since we are armed with such dynamic weaponry, we stand ready to punish any trace of rebellion as soon as you choose complete obedience.
Wow.
Gosh. I mean, that's just so powerful.
It is. It really is, because we get to demolish every deceptive fantasy that
Ooh.
opposes God. I love that the way that is written, because we talk about those imaginary things that we have wedged between us that make us imagine separation between us and God.
Right.
And we can demolish those deceptions easily.
Yeah.
But you have to do it, and we stand ready to punish any trace of rebellion as soon as you choose complete obedience. This is another big topic that people love to push back against, is obedience. People want to be told what to do, and they especially want to be told how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you offer that up to them, there's resistance. They want to push back. And even when this is you're delivering something that's from God, and there's still a resistance there. Even when people discover it for themselves, there's still a resistance there, because they haven't yet chosen complete obedience. So it's hard to get the restoration of all the things if that isn't there, if that isn't an aspect of it, because we want to live contained, live in compromise, rather than complete obedience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the thing is that, like, we totally understand that nobody is saying, like, I'm choosing compromise today, right? That's like, we don't wake up and we're like, I'm choosing to be in compromise with God today. That's not what we're talking about. It's by our decisions, moment to moment, by our agreement with thoughts that come at us, that we're siding with, is maybe a better way to say it, that we're siding with compromise because of the fear tactics used against us. And so our thought life is something that I feel like God is really wanting to command attention in, is like, pay attention to your thoughts. What is it that you're thinking? And should you be thinking those thoughts, right? And we're so habitual in our thought life that we don't know how to stop and be like, whoa, what was that? Like, I want us to get to the point, like, this is the level of restoration that I'm after, is that those common thoughts now become like disruptive thoughts, in the near future, where I'm like, what? You don't belong here, kind of thing. And that's the kind of, taking that captive that we're talking about. And it is a militant action, and everything that God has said to us since, late summer has had this militancy on it, where, and really it's how he's showing up with us. I mean, yes, he's still very much the ever-loving Father. He can't change himself. It's not that he's just revealing another nature of himself. And we need him in this regard. We need him to be that militant God right now, where he's not going to take any of our crap, and or what's going on around us. Like, it's his protection over us that he's standing as a general right now and commanding scenarios for us. And I love that. I love that he's willing to do that. He could have anything, right? He's God. He could do anything. But he chooses to partner with us and to display his defense concerning us. And I think that he's teaching us. He's teaching us on a regular basis, like, that thought right there was crippling to you. And something else that came up for me is it was actually birthed out of a conversation from last week. And it was the simplicity of, I just want to start over. I just want something new. Well, what God was showing me in this, and I've heard this multiple times in the last probably month, where fresh start kind of a mentality. But when that's being said, it's like this mentality of scrapping everything, right? Like, we don't want to learn from the mess. We want to just escape the mess. And that is the opposite definition of what restoration is, right? It's like God is wanting to enter into the mess teach us to be able to closely examine the mess, to be able to alter the mess. And when we're aching for a fresh start, or we're looking at escapism as our way out, we're not dealing with anything. We're looking, actually, this is what God was showing me, and this probably sounds extraordinarily harsh, but when we have that mentality of I need to just start over, I need a fresh start, I have to go somewhere else where, nobody knows my name, kind of thing. The problem with that is the mess is internal, and it's going to manifest wherever it is that you go.
That's true.
And so you're not really escaping anything, because the problem resides within. And basically, the really harsh way of saying it is the same demons will be wherever it is that you are. So we have to, in this season, this is why restoration is so on God's mind, because this is what we've done as Christians. We church up. Well, I don't like it here anymore,
Yeah.
and so we're offended, and we decide to jump ship and go somewhere else. And honestly, you guys, this isn't just the church. This has happened. I mean, even in business scenarios, there's a mass exoduses over the last couple of years where people have left their jobs looking for the fresh start. Well, guess what? Whether you're working from home or working from a completely different, job, same problems, because they're internal. We're not dealing with anything. We're just attempting to escape the problems. And God he is the God who wants to overturn everything and prove who he is, right? Like, wow, he's a big God, capable of doing those things. And I feel like there's just such a promise in that, where he's like, trust me in this, that I really can restore everything. He really can redeem all the things. Jump in.
Well, I really like how you were talking about, how our thoughts are constantly with us, and the enemy can design it to be like a slow kill, because our thoughts are constantly with us. And so, we have to have a level of maturity and discernment with Holy Spirit to filter all those thoughts, because the enemy can be so slick and just bringing a thought. So the first thing I think you want to do with thoughts is discern, is this thought coming from inward, or is this thought coming from outward?
Yeah.
Because according to whether it's inward or outward, you're going to deal with it probably a little differently. Because if it's coming from inward, then that's something that Holy Spirit and you may need to do a deeper work on. But if they're coming from outward, then I think you're going to need to be, like you talked about, a little bit more militant with those thoughts. And so I like how, I think that was the Passion you read, wasn't it, Vince? How it talks about, punishing the rebellion and choosing obedience. And yeah, punish sounds like a strong word. And when I say punish rebellion in me, doesn't mean I want you to punish me, but we do say that we are to be wise as serpent and gentle as doves.
Right.
The wisdom is the strategy we need, but the gentility is not necessarily, it's not at all for the spirit. The gentility is for the person, but we're to be violent with the spirit of rebellion. We are to punish the spirit of rebellion. That's the word he uses. And so I know in my own life, because one of the key things that I think we're all fighting in this season is distraction. And so I think when the enemy commingles distraction while he's popping in those thoughts at the same time, you don't stop. Right. You just go on to the next thing. And sometimes you don't think about it till later, or then you have a still moment, and then the enemy starts to talk, and It's kind of like praying without ceasing. You kind of have to be filtering your thoughts without ceasing, because the enemy is relentless. He never stops, he never stops.
Mhm.
So I like how you talked about having, to be more militant with ourselves. I just, there's mornings or afternoons, whatever time of day, I just have to say, no, no, no. Just less than 24 hours ago, it's like, no, you're not going to think that. No, because you've thought that before, and it takes you down this trail, and you know how long it takes to get out of that. So no,
Right.
no, we're not doing that, Pepper. And for me, that's how it kind of looks when I'm punishing that thought or being militant against it. Instead of just passive, because sometimes we like the passivity because it feels good to our flesh, because it feels like, poor me, or we feel justified in having that thought. Well, this is just,
I'm the victim.
yeah. And
Yeah.
then we love this one. Well, this has gone on in my life so long. Poor me. I've had to endure this so long. So
your pet thoughts.
yeah, those pet
Yeah.
thoughts. Those little pet thoughts.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. I do want to go back to, unless you have something to add, Vince, on that.
No.
Okay, I want to go back to Hebrews 11, and I want to read this because I think that it has everything to do with partnering with the restoration of all the things, right? So Hebrews 11, verse 1, now faith brings our hopes into reality and becomes the foundation needed to acquire the things we long for. It is all the evidence required to prove what is still unseen. I love that. It is all the evidence required to prove what is still unseen. Faith, right? Wow. The testimony of faith is what previous generations were commended for. Faith empowers us to see that the universe was created and beautifully coordinated by the power of God's words. He spoke, and the invisible realm gave birth to all that is seen. I mean, come on. If that doesn't get you excited, I don't know what will. I love that line that he spoke, and the invisible realm gave birth to all that is seen. And so this is our realm, right? This is our realm to captain, is the faith realm. And depending on what we're thinking and believing is what's going to manifest. The spirit realm is here to serve us. Wow. And what we're pulling out of it most of the time is negativity. What we're pulling out of it is misconfigured blah, because we allow our thoughts to run rampant, and they determine our actions. And so we're creating with the spoken word the same way that the Father did. We're creating things with the spoken word that is inspired by our thoughts. And that's why it's so important that we take captive every thought. That's what it says, right, Vince? It's every thought, not just the ones that you deem evil, right? It's every thought. And if we can create a filter system to funnel all of the thoughts through. And God gave me a picture one time, and this is like super juvenile. Anybody could pick up on it. Like the little toys, toddler toys, and they have shapes all the way around them. They're typically red on one side, blue on the other, and you can pull them apart and empty out the little blocks that are inside. But there's shapes cut out all the way around it, and there's only one shape that can fit through one hole. And Jesus was showing me this because he was like, Angie, if it doesn't fit inside of me, it doesn't belong in your mind. And it's just such a simplistic way of laying it out for me. And it has stuck with me. If it can't fit within Jesus, then it doesn't belong within my mind. And so that's the filter system that I'm reminding myself of on a regular basis, is like, does this complement Jesus?
Yeah.
Are my thoughts complementing Jesus?
That's good.
If not, they don't fit. They can't stick around. And so perhaps a thought that was allowed in last season in Squishy Jesus season, perhaps that complemented, that thought was allowed to stay because it complemented how he was revealing himself in that season. I can't carry those thoughts right now. They're disruptive to what it is that God is doing. Therefore, I have to take that thought captive and go like, yeah, I miss those days. Kiss it, stick it on the shelf, right?
Right.
It's like, we did great, Squishy Jesus. And I'm not downplaying that at all. I know it sounds probably just horrible when I say that, but I loved that season.
I love Squishy Jesus.
I love Squishy Jesus. There's times where my soul is pining for Squishy Jesus. Can we just go back to that kind of thing? But that's actually that's me. Really, it's me serving temptation rather than obedience, and I don't want to do that. I want to be where he is at. So I think that's one of the reasons why it's like every thought. If Paul meant only the evil ones, he'd have said that.
Right.
But it's every thought, and the reason is because not every thought, good or bad, that complements who God is revealing himself as.
That is so good.
Yeah. I use in my own funnel, I have to start with reminding myself of the authority that I carry to be able to do this, to be able to take every thought captive. And then in my filtering of these things, I'm looking at what is the purpose of this thought in my life. When I really start to get these thoughts that are kind of leading me down a path of other thoughts to conclusions or anything like that, I start to look at, whoa, okay, we got to stop. What is the purpose of this thought in my life? And what's the motivation behind that purpose? And when I look at purpose and motivation, I start to uncover a whole lot of things, either good or bad, about the thoughts. And so that's a tool that I use in my own filter to look at these thoughts as, and you'll see these things come out pretty easily once you get that thought captive, and you make it, like it says, bow in obedience to Jesus. Once the knee is bowed to Jesus, all of the purpose and motivation just becomes plainly evident.
Right. It's so true. It's so true. And our thoughts really do have everything to do with the spirit realm, because we're partnered with it, whether we realize it or not. We are constantly pulling things out of the spirit realm without even knowing it. It's bizarre for my mind to even be able to wrap around this unseen realm that is serving us on a regular basis. But it's certainly, like, the more I'm sitting here talking about it, the more I'm going like, be careful, little mouth, what you say. Because it is commanded by our words. I mean, what a creative God that he would speak us into existence. And also part of the ingredients that went into making us is that we would have the power and the authority to command an unseen realm. Yeah. Dang. That's amazing. And so that's why it's just so important that our confidence is in that hope that faith has birthed, and that we're speaking to that thing on a regular basis. You know what? You stupid little inspired imaginative outcome. You got to go. Like that's not partnering with God. It's partnering with, honestly, something that has no authenticity whatsoever. We've just allowed our imagination to run wild and create an outcome that's actually not on God's mind. And so we've got to get into God's mind. And I think that's part of the reason why, and we've talked about this a couple different times, that he'd given me a vision of him saddling our minds and bridling our tongues, because the two are definitely attached. They work together seamlessly. What we think, we speak.
Yeah. True.
So, restoring all things. Here we go. Oh my gosh, what does that even look like? I don't know. I'm excited though. It's overwhelming and it's exciting at the same time. And I know that there are the beginnings of people seeing like the workings of God, and things are starting to shift and turn, and maybe for others things are getting worse. And for me personally, I'm taking that as a sign. Yeah.
There you go.
That all things are surfacing right now, and that it's just the last stand, and I'm okay with that too. It's like you can stand firm all you want, you still got to go.
Yeah.
You still have to go, because you will bow to God's ordained promise that you will be restored in the end. So that's where our confidence has to lie, is in the hope of restoration right now. So, okay. I am so excited about this upcoming Sunday. We have finagled a panel of therapists to come in on Sunday morning and talk to us about restoration. And for them, we put this topic of restoring all things on them. And but it's going to be a good conversation. We chatted with them a little bit yesterday, and you could just feel the excitement in the text conversation. And so tune in on Sunday morning. It'll probably be 11ish. It's so hard for us to, I mean, who can pin God down, right? Like, we start worshiping and he wants to go off-roading somewhere, and I'm not about to tell him no. So it'll be 11ish when we go live on Sunday morning. You're just gonna have to like stay tuned, because it's going to be a good conversation. Two of these people are really good friends of mine, and they are brilliant. They are brilliant, and restoration of humanity is always on their mind. And so they're the ones that take the deep swan dive into the soul of man, and they do the manipulative things, good manipulation, to bring about wellness in the souls of humanity. So I am super excited. And then the other lady is a friend of, or a coworker of, that they're bringing in, and she just happens to be a seer prophet. And so I am just like, I'm so excited to have her along for the ride, because last time she came just for a visit, she's like, there are angels everywhere in this room. And so that's always fun to hear, that, you know, the angelic host has come to visit. And I'm not suggesting that they're not always there. I'm just, you know, saying that it's fun when somebody announces it. And so I'm looking forward to what it is that they have to share with us. It's going to be a good morning. So stay tuned. If you're in the area, don't stay at home. Show up. It'll be better. So with that, do you guys have last words? All right, then we will just say goodbye. Have a great week.